Hello, everyone, and welcome again to a new episode. This week, we are going to talk about transformation. And my voice isn't one more. My throat's transforming right now. So, the thing about transformation is sometimes we think it's more of a like external thing. So, I'm going to transform how I do this or that, but it really starts within because everything starts from an unseen and becomes seen, just like God spoke the world into existence from, he had a vision of what he was about to create. And so transformation starts within us. No one can do it for us. Um, we have to choose every single day to allow that transformation to take place. So, in essence, we are the clay that God is molding. And when we give ourselves fully to Him, His hands come in and He takes us and He shapes us and He heals us and He makes us more of who He created us to be. So that transformation sometimes can be a little rough, can be a little rocky. It can be, but at the core of it, it's beautiful and it's magical and it's miraculous that He even loves us that much to take that time out to create such beauty within us that we can share. And that's the transformation that we're talking about, where God gets in there and He guides us through the lessons and through the cleansing and through the healing and just makes us more complete within Him because without Him, we are dust. So,
Hmm.
this is the transformation that we're talking about today.
Wow, what a deep way to reel us in here. I love that. That was good.
That was
Um,
God.
that's God for
Yes.
sure. I like to say that, when it comes to transformation, um, we use the term grace so loosely. And we often mistaken the word grace for mercy, where mercy is like obviously God is not condemning us to what we deserve. He's giving us mercy to not get what we deserve. And so we're like, oh, whenever we do something wrong, we make a poor choice, we're like, oh, God, by God's grace, like God has grace for me, like He forgives me. So I can continue to live this way. And that's not what grace is for us. Grace is actually the change agent for us to transform from these mistakes, to heal from these hurts, to move forward from this past. And we have to remember that Jesus wants abundance for us. And Jesus is abundance. So if we're encountering Jesus, we should be changing. We should not be staying the same if we are truly encountering Jesus. And so I think that's the main point I want to say is that if we are not changing, if we're not transforming in this walk, in this journey, then we're either not encountering Jesus at all or enough. And like you mentioned, Laurie, that it needs to be an everyday, all the time thing. Like it's a constant work. It's not something that, oh, I walked into this church one day and I just felt, this electricity. I felt this draw to just ask Jesus into my heart. And I did. And I went back to living the same way. But I'm going to heaven because I know Jesus. I asked Him into my heart. And Jesus doesn't want that for us. He's like, no, like that's literally like the first baby step to knowing me is just to acknowledge me. Like people think that because they acknowledged that Jesus is real and that He loves them, it's like, oh, job done. Like I can continue on with my life and now I have His forgiveness. I have His grace for all my mistakes and I can just keep repeating them and keep repeating them. And I promise you, you won't find abundance in your life if you keep on that path. And I mean, I know plenty of times where I have taken advantage of God's grace in my personal walk. And I've finally just gotten to that point where I'm like, Lord, like, I don't want to take advantage of your grace. I don't want to take advantage of it. I want to be transformed from every situation. We say it all the time that everything happens for a reason. And so are we going to actually look through the depths of that, what that looks like, what that means, how we can be transformed through every situation that comes at us, every situation we're walking through, that we can literally grab God's hand and watch him just do a work in us that we would never experience on our own. Like because it's easy to just excuse and point the finger and blame. And this is why I reacted like this because they did this to me. They cut me off. They cussed me out. Like, obviously, this is why I reacted like this. And so it's easy to just point the finger, be like, this is why I did it, instead of, looking up to the true example of perfection, who's Jesus, and saying, Jesus, you're the standard. Like, what do you want me to do here? And watch him transform us into that abundance, that better version that he has for us.
Yeah, and I like that you brought up the pointing the finger because as you were saying that, I'm thinking when we do that, when we make excuses, we're pointing to the lie because that's
Mm,
not at all true. Because things that trigger us or the choices that we make, those are ours. Those are ours to own and to learn from and to get the lesson from. And also, as I'm thinking of transformation, the greatest transformation is understand that God's love is in everything. Because when
mhm.
you start to wrap yourself up in that love is the catalyst. It's what changes you, the desire to want more of Him,
Yep.
because He wants more of you too. That's what we forget. Like, we're here, you're here because you have a distinct purpose. That's part of His purpose. His will is always going to be done. And so when we draw near to him and we want more of him, he wants more of us. And that's why he starts to refine us
Yep.
to be more of who he created you to be. He desires nothing more than that loving relationship that we're meant to have with him. And when we're pointing fingers at other people, we're not in his love. And if we're not being transformed, we're not in his love because his love instantly starts to transform you. Because when you're in it, you want nothing more than for everyone else to be in it too, because it's the
Yep.
most amazing place to live your life from is in that love. And that love will transform you and change you. And that's the love that allows us to heal. That's the love that allows you to step into the giftings that He's given you. That love is what changes the world for the better. And when you look out in the world right now, that's not love out there.
Right.
His love is lacking out there, which is crazy because His love is literally in everything, and people miss it every single day. They walk right by it. They walk right through it and don't even recognize it. And that actually scares me.
Yeah. Wow.
It's
Well, and
scary.
also being in that place too, where we know what it feels like. I mean, this is a convicting moment, right? We know what the fullness of God's love feels like, and we walk in it in our own personal life. Maybe you just, this is who you are in between the walls of your home, but when you step outside and you go out with those old friends, or, hanging around that same group, you get on the phone with that one person, and all of a sudden all your whole mouth, that your tongue changes, right?
Mhm.
And it just makes us wonder, why am I not sharing this fullness of God and his love with these people that I'm connected to, that don't know the fullness of his love, that don't recognize it whenever I do recognize it? I know what it feels like. I know what it looks like. I experience it in the four walls of my home. But when I step outside, I don't. And I think that is another part in our transformation, is what starts. I think you're at a really sweet spot in that form of transformation, because you're doing all the inner work. You're in, the walls of your home. You're transforming internally, you're renewing your mind. But now we have to take a committed action step to further that transformation, because God's like, great, great, great. Yes, you're experiencing all of me. You know what I feel like. You know what I look like. You know what I sound like. But now you have to step out in boldness. It takes work on our end to transform. We can't just be like, all right, God, like, have your way with me. And yes, I think that's important. We do have to do that first, and then step into boldness and take the first step, say the first, open our mouth so he can speak through it, right? If we keep our mouth shut, he can't speak through it. So we have to take that act of boldness, courage, and, align with him in our external life as well. And so that way the overflow from what's within can flow without, or can flow on the outside and in our external life. And it can impact and touch people and move people like it's supposed to do. It's supposed to come over like a tidal wave, his word, his ways. It's supposed to just, I think of, I don't know, when you do the wave, everyone's lined up and they're doing the wave. The first person starts it, and then everyone starts to do the wave. And I think that's what God desires for his word to do, is just, someone sparks it and then it spreads like a wildfire. And we all feel that fullness of his love. And it starts with us taking that step of boldness and courage to, hey, I've been transforming internally, and God, I love you so much. I love that you said love is the catalyst, because we will not desire obedience to him. We will not desire transformation if we don't love him. If we don't recognize his love for us, and if we don't love him, we're not going to have that awe or that desire to be obedient, or to, want to willingly transform. We won't even recognize it. So I think it definitely starts there. And then just, the willingness to surrender to him, and to trust him that when I open my mouth to this person, when I set a boundary to these people that once knew me as this person, but now, hey, I have a new heart. Like, I'm sorry, I can't go out. Like, I can't do that. I'm sorry. That just doesn't align with who I am, but anymore. But I'd love to have you come to our church sometime, something like that. I mean, just let him speak through you, because he knows what that other person you're talking to needs. And he can do incredible things in that form of transformation too. And that just grows your spiritual maturity as well when you start stepping out in that boldness too.
Yeah, and the thing about transformation is you can transform on your own. You can do the
Mm-hmm.
work. You can learn the skills. You can take the steps and transform yourself, and it's beautiful. But the thing about when it's God's love transforming you, and the miraculous way of that working is that when God's love is transforming you, it's transforming everything and everyone around you. They're feeling something, they're changing, and not even realizing how this is happening. I mean, that's
Yes.
how powerful his. I just got goosebumps. That's how powerful his love is in transforming you. It transforms everything around you,
Yep.
including the people. I have seen it happen. Being a mother, I have seen it happen. And it's crazy how, and I can remember, like, this reminds me of a story. So when I really first started on my journey many, many years ago, and was journaling, and I was just sharing with another teacher that I worked with. Every day I would be like, oh, this happened to me, and God spoke this to me. And I would literally read stuff from my journal of God spoke to me, and not even thinking about it. I just wanted to share him so much. And I
Mm,
watched this person's whole demeanor change, and even his relationship with his wife changed because I was talking about, which is crazy now I think about it. He was talking to me about the one he had created for me, and the other half of my heart. And as I kept sharing that with him, he finally one day was telling me, like, my wife's my soulmate. She was,
no.
yeah, I know, it was so crazy. So just me sharing that love was just pouring out of me. It started changing him. It started
Yep.
changing the kids that I worked with. It shifted the atmosphere in my classroom. We can do this. You can go to work and shift the atmosphere at work. Even if
Yeah.
you're the only one
Yep.
walking in God's love, you can walk into a building that's completely shaded and shadowed and shine his light. And people will be like, why are you different?
Yep.
Why are you're always so pleasant? You're always so kind.
Yep.
How do these people not drive you crazy? It's because
Uh,
because I'm standing in God's transformational love. And so I don't want to
yeah.
be anything but that love, that flow. And again, that transformation has to start with you. And I know I've met lots of people, and they may have that spiritual gift of I don't know, I just lost it, but wanting to do stuff for other people. And so it makes them feel good to do stuff. But if you're not filled with God's love, that you're always empty and you're not giving them God's love because you don't have it. You
Yes.
must have it first. It all starts from the unseen within you, the
Well,
very
and with God's
essence.
love,
Yes. Yeah.
with God's love within you, right? There's an eternal value that's attached to being that helper, and pouring out to people. Like you said, the people that naturally have that instinct to do things for others. But there's a shift whenever God's involved, because when it's just your own desire, you're using that as validation for yourself. You're using that to fill you because it fills you up to do things for other people. But when we're filled with God and we're doing these things for other people, it is merely to point to his glory. It is not for our own validation. It is not to fill my cup. Like I do these things because God loves those things, and he wants to do these things for you. And we're in this fullness of him and his goodness, his glory. And so I think there's that catapulting shift as well when you're operating in God versus, someone that just likes to do good things, but they don't have God at the center of their life, or, even know God, but they're like, oh, I'm a good person. I volunteer every weekend at the shelter. And, there are those people out there that just naturally have that instinct to just do good. But good works doesn't get us into heaven. I mean, that's just the truth. You could do all the good and not know Jesus. And unfortunately, that's not, depart from me, for I never knew you. I never knew you. And so just that heart shift is everything, to let God really come in and blow our minds truly. And Romans 12:2 says, do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. So if we're conforming to the world, we won't see God moving. We won't be in a position or have the capacity to test and approve what his will is, because we're blinded to him. So we're gonna continue to just stay in this mundane, this surface filled life, same patterns, same habits. And like you said, you can do transformation. There's people out there all over the world that are just on it, and they love to grow, they love to learn. They're incredibly intelligent. Their emotional intelligence is spot on. Like, not only do they have a high IQ and they're smart, but they're great with people. They understand people, they understand this world, they understand connections, they understand so much. They care about their health, they care about their mind, they care about their body, they care about their spirit. But without god without God being that spirit, um they're lacking everything. And I think there's so much power in that right there, that he's our transformation. You can be transforming all you want on your own, but without him, there's zero eternal value attached to our transformation.
Hmm.
And our transformation won't be aligned with him and his will. We won't know his good, pleasing, and perfect will if he's not in the picture. And we're not being transformed by him, rather conforming to the world and these habits and whatever the world is promoting it and wants you to get sucked into, just whatever everyone else is doing, going with the flow. um the flow never serves us, ever.
Yeah. Wide is the gate that leads to destruction.
Yep.
So, and again, God's love is the light. So when you're not walking in his love, you're literally walking in darkness. I mean, it might be bright out and it might look bright,
Mm,
but there's always going to be this piece of you that's like, I'm meant for something more. It's always going to feel like there's something missing, because it literally is. You are missing the connection to the source of all love, all of that. And then you can't give his love to other people if you don't have it. I've said that already, but it's so true. You must first have in order to give.
yep.
And then once you have, you become, I just picture like this spotlight. When you plug into God's love, you just shine out like so bright, and people are attracted to it. And it's that certain something when you know these people, you walk in and you see them come into a room and everyone just gravitates to them. There's just something about them that, and other Christians know when you have that love in you, you see that love in other people. You recognize it because you see them glowing and you hear the words coming out of their mouth. They're
Yeah.
God's words. You recognize God's voice when it comes out of other people's mouths. That's what's amazing about it. And I can't
Yeah.
remember the verse about the sheep know the shepherd's voice. That's part of that discernment. So when you're not walking in God's love, people can deceive you easily and say, "Yeah, that's in the Bible. That's
Yeah.
what it says."
That's
And
in
you,
Hebrews, I
yeah,
believe.
yeah, and then you're like, "Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds right." And that's the first step out off your path because you're like, "Well, that sounds like it could be true." And we don't think to
Mhm.
question it because we don't know God's voice. And if you know his voice and you hear something, you're instantly going to go, "Ooh, no, 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 no. That's not quite right." That
Mhm.
inner knowing when you're plugged into the source, you're like, mm, that sounds kind of interesting, but I don't think that's quite right. Something's not quite there. Because that's how Satan gets us. He gives us just like a glimmer of truth and then like ruins it with a lie. But
Right.
if you don't know the truth versus the lie, it all just sounds like truth. And pretty soon you're way, way, way over there. And you're like, how'd I get over here?
Right.
So
Let's
yeah,
go.
that transformation works both ways. You can be transformed to go the completely other direction. Because if you're not
Yeah.
becoming more of God, you're becoming less of God. That's the
Yes.
thing. You're either
That's
becoming
true.
more or less. So that
Yeah.
abundance works both ways. You can become abundance of all the good things, or you can become abundance of all the things you don't want
Right.
by
And I
not
think
choosing. Yeah.
people fail to recognize too, that, when we talk about black and white, we talk about, good versus evil. Like it really is black and white, but the enemy's goal is not necessarily for us to worship him. It's not like, it's easy to point out all these devil worshippers and Satanists and, see these Grammy performances and just be like, what? Like these people are crazy, right? What is going on? Like there's no way. And you know it in your heart, like, even if you're not walking with God, you're that person's just like, I will never do that. Like I will never worship the devil. And he's just laughing because he's like, I don't care if you do. As long as you're not worshiping God, that's it. He doesn't
Mm-hmm.
want us to worship God. We can idol and worship anything else but God. And so if you're worshiping and you're idling the ways of this world, you know, staying busy, keeping our schedules full, not making any time for God to come in and renew our minds, renew our spirits, transform us into a new way to walk against the grain. I don't know if you've ever seen The Chosen. Have you seen The Chosen, Lori?
Maybe.
Oh, no, you have
Probably. I
then.
probably have, but I'm kind of tired.
It's a new show. It's a new show. You'll have to watch it. It's
Okay.
the gospel. It's the story of Jesus and his disciples, and it's incredible. And it's free. That's cool. I mean, obviously they do have donation opportunities and stuff like that, but you don't have to have a subscription or anything. And so the beginning of this show, when they're doing all their introductions, it's all these fish swimming down this river, and they're all swimming, and then the introductions are still going, and they're getting about halfway through the introductions, and then you see one fish turn back and swim against all the other fish, and then another one will turn and follow that fish. And then there's like three or four that all turn against all those other fish and are following this one fish. And it's just so cool to watch that because it's like that's what Jesus did. Like
Mm-hmm.
Jesus literally went against the grain. He paved the way, he set the example, and slowly but surely, one by one, the rest of us follow and turn against the grain. And like you said, that there's the wide path and there's the narrow path. And so and never showed every single fish turning around to follow Jesus. It actually only showed few
Mm-hmm.
turning around to follow Jesus. And the rest of the fish were just swarming the other way, not paying any mind, being conformed to the world. And then there's the few, he says the few that are chosen, few that are called, few that are chosen. Many are called, few are chosen, meaning few grasp on to the concept here. He's calling many. He wants all of us to understand his fullness and to step into the fullness of him and his love and to be transformed. But only few actually are like, hey, okay, God, like transform me. Only if you were willing to surrender. And so, there's so much to unpack just in that concept alone.
Yeah,
But
yeah, there is. But I think the biggest thing to point out is that as you were talking, I just thought like, because Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. He
hmm
says it. He came and he's just honest the whole time, always speaking truth.
yep.
Satan likes to blur that line.
Mm.
He's the one that tries to get you to question, is he really the way? Is he, how can he be the light? How is he the light? He's just this man. He tries to blur it. He tries to get you to question the truth, because
Yep.
once he gets you to question the truth, it's easier for him to try to insert a new one.
New truth. There's so many truths, right? There's people out there that believe in so many truths. Like, well, this is true. This seems true. I mean, look at all this evidence that backs it up. This looks true. Um, and so it can be super deceiving, and it does blur the line. That's a great point.
Right?
But
So it's your job to have that relationship with your king so that he
mm,
can speak directly to you, so that you know what the truth is. You don't have to wait for Taylor and Laurie to come on here and tell you truth.
yeah,
You don't have to go to church to hear truth. You can be hearing it every moment of every day when you open your heart up and say, God, I love you, love me. And the more that you love him and the more he loves you, the more you love you.
yeah.
It just, love is always getting bigger. It never gets smaller. We
I
can
would
only
say
ever
the
get
more
more.
I would say the more we recognize his love for us, because his love never changes depending on how much we love him or how little we love him back. It's unconditional,
Hmm.
whether we love him or whether we don't love him. He always loves, but it's a matter of us recognizing how much he loves us, because it's so wide, it's so like tall. Like his love is, we can't even put words to it. We can't put
Yeah.
words to it, but there's no comparison. So um the more that we love him and the more that we honor him and surrender to him, the more we're going to see his love for us. How big it really is, how true it really is. It's all going to become clear. And that's how transformation takes place, is because we have clarity, we have direction. I think that whenever we whenever we conform rather than transform, we have created a recipe for loss of direction, loss of identity, loss of purpose, because there's so much fake truth out there. There's so much confusion out there. And so it's just one thing. Like, if we just grab hold of that and stick to that, like, it's just Jesus. It's just Jesus. And cling to that. Like, there's so much transformation for us, and it's never ending. That's the thing I think it's important to remember too. You know, this Christian walk, it's never ending. It's constant refinement. And we have a high standard. I mean, Jesus is a high standard. Like, so anytime that, I think it's a great way to humble ourselves too, because we aren't so righteous whenever we think we are. And he's like, yeah, humble thyself. Remember, I'm the standard.
Yeah. It's a
It's
big
like, oh,
standard to
that's
look
right.
up to.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
But the thing about God's love is, I always try to think of it as like a dimmer switch. So
Mm,
our human flesh could not handle God's, if he poured on all of his love on you, like you couldn't handle it. So when you're
yeah.
first stepping into that love, it's like that dimmer switch. You can only turn so much at a time. It's like we have to learn and be like healed and adjusted and shaped by him to hold more of him.
Yes.
So his love like is so big and so overwhelming at times. I mean, I've had my face on the floor sometimes when his love comes over me, like I can't even move. It's so
Can't
overwhelming.
move.
And so
Yeah.
yeah, I know like you're sobbing on the floor, but it's like good tears.
Yes.
um, but the enormity of it, like you can't pass that on until you learn to be able to let become that flow.
Yeah.
And it's like step by step process, because he can only give us so much at a time, because we literally could not handle if he just full on showed all of his love on you. Like you got to
Yeah. No.
learn to take little bits at a time. He's like honing your flesh to be able to withstand the power of it.
Yeah, and that's the
That's
process of transforming right there. I mean, you just that's the definition right there. Little by little, he's cutting out parts of the flesh
yeah.
and enhancing our spirit. And we want to be in that place where we're operating majority in spirit over flesh. Because then we're experiencing his fullness. So do you have any other last words you want to say about transformation? That was really good.
I know. Oh, we went deep. Um, I would just say that every day is a new day. His mercies are new every morning. So
Yeah.
even if you feel like yesterday you meant to do all these things that were going to help transform you, no, God has you exactly right where you need to be, right at the time you need to be. So
Yep.
Satan's the one
Yep.
that blurs that line that makes you feel like you're behind or it's too late or you need to hurry up to catch up. No,
Mm,
you're right where God wants you to be, and you're right in that moment He needs you to be. We just need to be open to those moments every single day to allow His processes through us.
wow. That's so good. I love that you ended with that because, when we're talking about um, our highest capacity, right? The fullness of God. We're using all these big terms and oh wow, he has this image of where he wants me, and like I'm nowhere near that right now. It makes us feel, and the enemy will use that right there to creep up and attack and be like, yeah, you'll never amount. And one seated deception that just leads us into giving up and being like, I'll never be good enough for God. I'll never transform into that image. Look at all the sin I'm dealing with. Look what I can't get past. And he's not asking you to get through it on your own.
Mhm.
He's just
But
asking you to surrender to him.
that did remind me of something else I wanted to say. Like I remembered and then forgot and then remembered.
There you go.
So here's the thing also, like God knows. He sees our whole path.
Yeah.
To him, our path is just bright. It's lit up. It is lit up like Vegas. It is lit all the way up to the end. Like he knows everything.
Hmm.
He can't show us that though. He can't show us the end because we'd be like, "Whoop," we'd be running down the path and we would miss all of our lessons and all of
Yeah.
the things that will transform us and make us more of who we're meant to be because our
Hmm.
eyes would be on that end goal instead of him.
Right.
So he'll only give us like this dim little light of like, here's your first step. And you're like, but all I see is just this one little step. And that's where it begins is learning to trust him because he sees everything. It's lit up like Vegas to him. He knows everywhere you're going, every person
Mhm.
whose life you're going to touch, every seed you plant, every plant you water. He knows all of it. But if you're not focusing on him, you'll miss all of it.
Mm.
You'll miss all of it. So take that
Wow.
step. It's not too late. You can take a step today. You can take a step tomorrow.
Yeah, wherever you are, we're all in different, places in our journey. So it does not matter where you are. He says a mustard seed of faith, and that's all. And that's your one step. You're like, I don't have, this great big faith. I'm not like, all right, Lord, here, I'm selling all my belongings and where do you want me? That's not what he's asking. Wherever you are in your journey,
Mm-hmm.
take that one step. You'll know that feeling that comes over you that's like maybe you've been avoiding it, that one little step. And maybe this can be a great reminder for you. Maybe the Holy Spirit's already doing a work in you to just be like, all right, here we go. Grab my hand. We're stepping forward. And I think that's another great point about transformation too, is maybe you're in that place where you're not hearing God and you're like, I'm not feeling him. I'm not hearing him. I feel like I'm in a rut. And that's because the Holy Spirit's ahead of you and he's calling you to him. He
Mm-hmm.
said, take this step. And he's calling you to him. And you'll be met again in that place of just like, you'll feel his presence consume you because you took that step that he's calling you forward to. That's the transformation process. He's calling us forward into transformation. Um, yes, he'll always meet us where we're at, but at some point, like Lori just said, he knows our whole path. He knows what's next. So if he's moving ahead, that's because he knows you're going to come to him. It's just a matter of when you come to him, when you walk, when you take that one step. He knows, like, this is what's next for you. Like, come on, we got to get off the milk. you know. Uh, so he's like, all right, let's go. So really good stuff, Lori. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of transformation, and we look forward to chatting with you guys on the next episode.
Yep. And feel free to reach out to us. We're both coaches. So if you have questions, comments, anything, reach out. We are here for you.
Absolutely.